Hey, what's up guys? This is Vikas Singh and welcome to Mentor Vikas channel. And here in this video, we are going to understand how we can use state and passes the state value from one component to another component in Qwik application, right? So to do this, we have two methods or two ways to perform these to transfer the state from one component to another component. So the first way is to pass it by a prop. So whatever being the value of the state, if I just want to pass to the another component, I can use the props. Okay, so props, by using that props we can pass that value. Or in another way, if I just want to pass the value from one component to another component without using this props, we have another solution for this, and that is what we call context APIs, right? So here we have that context. By using these context, we can pass the value from one component to another component, right? Okay, so to understand this in a much better way, let's move to a picture which I had just downloaded from a scalar website. As you can see here, for example, this is the parent component, right? So this A is the parent component, and this A has two child component. This is B and C, right? So for example, let's say we have a name which we had specified, which is managed at a component, right? So here we had declared a variable or a state which we had assigned a name variable, right? So if I just want to pass this name to this C component, that is its child, then here I am going to use this prop. Okay, so by using the props, I just passes this value from A to C, and if again I am willing to use this name in my G component, which is further the child component of C. So here the A is the parent of C, and here C is the parent of F and G component, right? So if I am willing to use this name in this G component, first I have to pass this prop from A to C and then from C to G. And for example, further this G component also have an I component, and here if I would like to use the name which I had managed in A component, right? So to do that, I have to firstly pass the props from level A to C, then C to G, then G to I, and finally I can have the name value in my I component and I can use that. Okay, and how you can do that? So to understand this, how we can use that props in our component, right? So as you can see, for using that props in Qwik, we doesn't import anything extra, right? So we had simply imported two things, that our component that had been used to calculate this component, okay, and the second one is use source and use store, and this use store is just to create the state variable in our component, right? So here in our case, we had just created an object, and this object has one key value pair, and the key is our count, right? And its initial value is setting to 0, right? Great. So as you can see here, we have, this is our default component, right? And here we had created a child component, right? So this is our parent component in our example, and this is our child component. And finally, what exactly we want to do, we want to pass the data from this component to this component, right? From parent component to child component. So as you can see here, in our case, as we return our child data or child component here as to display in our block. So if you see this is our child component, which we had just written here, right? So finally, but the data is being managed here in the parent component, right? So to use this data into my child component, which is here, we simply have to pass this as in prop. So to pass as in props, we just have to assign a name, and that name can be accessible. We can access this name in our child component simply, right? So as you can see, we had creating a variable name, that is the use data, and we had assigned this use data to this use data variable, right? Like so. And finally, just go to our children component, and here we just destructure this data. Okay, so instead of, if I am not willing to use this syntax, don't want to destructure the data, I can simply without using this curly braces, within this brackets I just simply write props. And for example, as here we had used this use data values, right? Here we had used this use value, use data value. So instead of writing this use data directly, we have to specify like props dot use data dot count. Okay, so that's how we can access the value if I am not going to destructure this value like this. Okay, but as in this example we had destructure our prop, so we had taken the use data variable from there, which we had passed as in props to a child, right? And finally we use this this data to show in the p tag. As you can see, this is our p tag, that is the paragraph tag, and here we have the initial value that we had assigned here in our component, right? So this is the way we can pass data from parent component to child component by props. Okay, so let's again move to this example. So as in our case, there we have this this parent component and this child component, right? But further, if I have to pass from this component to further a child component, and this as in parent component to this child component, we have to do the same process which we had just done in our example. For example, we passes this prop from parent to this child component. So further we have to in this component we have to import the another component and passes the data like this. Okay, and further and further and further to any nested levels. Okay, so for example, here in our case we have 4 nested levels, right? So to pass the data here, you can't just simply pass the data from here to here. Okay, you have to pass at each level, right? So this concept is also not good if I have to pass the data from a nested levels, right? So in such cases we do prefer to use that context, right? But as for now, I had just explained you how you can use how you can pass props from one component to another component. Okay, and you can do this for even for the nested components also, right? So this is how we can you can pass the props and can easily access its value by destructuring the data, right? Okay, so in our next video I am going to explain how this use contextual works. Or for let's also see this example. So it is not something different, it is simply an increment button. As I click on this, the account value will increases, and as the account value will increases, it will show up here in this p tag which is there, right? So it's just a simple function. Okay, so in our next video I will talk about how we can use context API, okay, or you can say context in our Qwik application. Okay, so why? Because as you had seen that here is a problem. If we have that nested level of elements, and if I have to pass the most parent, so the top parent data to the nested child, right? So I have to pass props at every level. Okay, and this is what we call prop drilling. Okay, to avoid that prop drilling we have to use context, right? So in our next video we will see how we can use that context in Qwik application. And for now I think this is enough, and let's meet you in the further videos.